It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a bitter injustice. The Hillsborough families speak out over a new report into the disaster. The police watchdog highlighted a series of failures before, during and after the disaster and identified a dozen officers who would have faced gross misconduct proceedings if they were still serving. The IOPC says police were guilty of deep complacency, fundamental failure and a concerted effort to blame fans, but no one will face any action.
It really makes you very, very angry when you think of all of those 97 who died unlawfully killed and yet not one person's being held to account. To me, that's a disgrace.
Also ahead, the shocking lack of action by some police forces following the murder of Sarah Everard. The report, prompted by Sarah's killing, says more than a quarter of forces are yet to implement even basic policies on the investigation of sex offences. We'll hear from the report author, Amina Smallman, whose daughters were murdered in 2020 before police officers posed for selfies with their bodies. Plus claims the former Prince Andrew won't receive a penny in compensation for giving up his home in Windsor. We'll have all the details as MPs announce an inquiry into royal rental arrangements. And we'll have tributes to former England batsman Robin Smith following his death in Australia at the age of 62. I'll be talking to his former teammate, Alan Lamb. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Hello. In many ways, the Hillsborough families have heard it all before. Police guilty of deep complacency, fundamental failure and a concerted effort to blame fans. The disaster in 1989 at Sheffield Wednesday Stadium would eventually claim the lives of 97 Liverpool fans. Today, 13 years since it started its investigation, the police watchdog identified 12 former officers who would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for their actions before, during or after the disaster. But because they are no longer serving in uniform, none of them will face any action. The victims' families say the report is yet another bitter injustice. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, reports.
For the families of the 97, it's been a long fight to get to the truth. The role of the police central to their search for justice. And after 13 years, the police watchdog has completed the largest ever independent investigation into alleged police misconduct and criminality.
I can only assume that there was overcrowding, and as they tried to come out from behind the barriers...
It found South Yorkshire Police fundamentally failed in its planning for that match, its response to the unfolding disaster, and how it dealt with supporters and families searching for their loved ones. It names a dozen officers who'd have had a case to answer for gross misconduct if they'd still been serving. Among them, the then Chief Constable Peter Wright, for his part in deflecting the blame away from police and towards Liverpool fans. He died in 2011. The match commander that day, Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield. He was cleared by a jury of gross negligence manslaughter. And Sir Norman Bettison would have had a case to answer for alleged dishonesty about his role that day while he was applying to be Chief Constable of Merseyside. No officers, though, will face any action as a result of this report.
The professional standards in place at the time were very different. The law is different now, where officers who have retired can face gross misconduct hearings. That's been a really significant change. And I think what our report really shows is how difficult it is when organisations prioritise defending their reputation rather than openly and immediately admitting the mistakes that they've made and working to put those right. It is very difficult to unpick that so many years later and deliver the accountability that people deserve.
For the families of the victims, among them Margaret Aspinall, who lost her son James, the lack of accountability is hard to take.
All of those 97 who died unlawfully killed and yet not one person's being held to account. To me, that's a disgrace. We're not here on behalf of Hillsborough. We're all sitting here to change things for the good of the country, for the good of the nation.
Teenage sisters Sarah and Vicky Hicks were among those who died. For their mother, this report offers little consolation.
I can't believe having seen the 370-odd page report, how on earth can it have taken them 13 years to write this when there's very little in the report that I didn't already know? It's not really, in my opinion, what I've read so far, telling the families anything.
One result of Hillsborough will be a law compelling public officials to be truthful with investigations. For the family of Andrew Mark Brooks, that, like this report, is not enough.
Nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change. There'll be another cover-up. There'll be, another disaster. And I think until things, change at the very top, and I include MPs, I include, chief constables, CEOs of organisations, until they're the ones who stop protecting and stop covering up from themselves.
In a statement, the current Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police said, "I fully accept the IOPC report, which highlights a litany of failures, and am so deeply sorry for the pain and heartache caused. The report is clear that people attended a football match in Sheffield and therefore they were in our care. The force failed them and also failed their loved ones in the days, months and years after. This will always be a point of deep regret and shame for South Yorkshire Police." Nearly 37 years on, for many, that justice they sought remains elusive. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Well, you saw Margaret Aspinall there in Greg's report. Her 18-year-old son James died at Hillsborough, and she's been a tireless campaigner for justice ever since. I spoke to her after that news conference this afternoon and asked her if she thinks anyone responsible for what happened that day will ever be held to account.
No, they'll never be held to account. But we knew that, we did expect that. But it wasn't about the Hillsborough families today. To me, it's about doing the right thing for the people of this country. And that's why we were there today as well. Hopefully to change a culture that's so corrupt and so morally wrong and unjust.
And you talk about the change in the culture. You're referring to the Hillsborough law, which is something you've been instrumental in bringing to the government.
Yes.
This is a law which compels people in public roles to tell the truth. I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it?
Exactly.
That such a simple thing, the thing that we teach our children, should be something that needs to be ingrained in law.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, really, that we are making sure that there is a duty of candour. I was always brought up to believe that the police tell the truth anyway. So, we've discovered today, what we've known for a long, long time, it's there in black and white now, that they did lie, they did cover up, they did alter statements. And to me, that has probably been going on over, decades, really. And unfortunately, it took the Hillsborough families to change, hopefully to try and change a culture that's so, as I've said, disgusting, really.
You've been mentioned by the Home Secretary today. She said it's thanks to people like you, your tireless campaigning, that we are introducing this law. I mean, I wonder, do you feel that the Hillsborough law will be the only tangible thing that you as families get out of this, the one thing that you can say is a legacy?
Well, I've said all along, you've got to try and look at positives that come out of Hillsborough as well as the negatives. And the positives is that, things have changed, especially for supporters who go to watch any football game, that they are treated completely different as they were in the 70s and 80s. And that's because 97 innocent people were unlawfully killed. And if we can change this law, that'll be there for generations and generations to come. And to me, will that be worth it? Yes, because I just feel that's what them 97 had want. They didn't die in vain. They will have changed. I feel as if we are the voices of them 97 and their ears and their eyes. And that to me was the most important thing, to change a culture for the good of the nation, for the ordinary people. And hopefully within this Hillsborough law, there will be a level playing field. That is very important for the ordinary people as well.
We heard from Sue Roberts sitting alongside you at that press conference, and she was talking about the importance of the fact that a lot of these police officers have been publicly named now in this IOPC report. How important is that to you?
Yeah.
She talked about the shame that she wants their families to feel.
Well, there's nothing else you can do. It's right to be named and shamed, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves, because what the families have gone through. But, you know, I was a relatively young woman and now an old woman. And to be still having to go out trying to change things for the good is absolutely wrong. It should have been there in the first place, actually. You know, if somebody had have done this many years ago, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you, and my son would still be alive. And to me, that's why we had to change things, because of them reasons.
There have also been statements from South Yorkshire Police Federation sort of warning about the mental health of some of these officers. What's your reaction to that?
God. Do you know what? I will not repeat what I am thinking in my mind over that, because actually it's for them to him to even come out and say things like that is an absolute disgrace. That some of them are old now, some have died. Well, my God, my son didn't reach the age of 18 and a half. He died for no reason. He died because of the incompetence of what the police done that day. And a lot of other, as I say, 96 others alongside him. A lot of the families who were in the court at the second inquest were dying, listening to the evidence that was hidden. They've since died. How lucky them police are to die a natural death. Even if they had an illness, they were still lucky to be with their family and be able to die in normal circumstances, and to reach an old age like they have. How lucky are they? How dare they insult us like that? How dare he?
Now, a major report into women's safety has found critical gaps in the prevention of harm, warning that sex offences are not given the same response as other high-priority crimes. The Angelili inquiry, set up after the rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a Met police officer, found that 26% of forces still lack even basic policies on the investigation of sex offences. The chair of the inquiry said urgent action is needed to prevent further violent sexual attacks against women and girls. Sky's Katie Barnfield reports.
You wouldn't believe the amount of people who are drunk and go in for a kiss or a hug and stuff. It's so degrading, especially if you've got a crowd of people watching.
Busking in cities like Liverpool, musician Amy Alex gets so much unwanted behaviour, she started posting it on social media.
You put money in this thing doesn't mean I have to give you a hug. Again, just got really close, started trying to touch me unconsensually. What was that? You just wiped on me. That was wet. When I watched it back, you can hear him say pee.
So he said, I've wiped pee on you.
Pee, and I was watching that back, editing it, my jaw just dropped and I was horrified. It's not right, and it used to upset me a hell of a lot more than it does now. When I was 21, 22, 23, when I started doing this, I used to go home in tears.
It's been 4 years since Sarah Everard's murder, and the outpouring of anger it caused about women's safety in public places. Her mother, Susan, said the brutality of her death still haunts her family, saying, "When I think of her, I can't get past the horror of her last hours. I'm still tormented by the thought of what she endured." Now, the inquiry into Sarah's death has found sexually motivated crimes against women are still not prioritised, and not enough has been done to help women feel safe.
Women change their travel plans, their routines and their lives out of fears for their safety in public, while far too many perpetrators continue to roam freely. Women deserve to feel safer.
So one of the things that we hand out to the women are safety alarms, but it's really handy to just kind of keep on your keys, on your person.
These lunch clubs are a safe space for the members of tomorrow's women, a Wirral charity offering support for everything from domestic violence to harassment in public.
You often find with a sexual assault case, the first question can often be, what were you wearing? And it really doesn't matter what the woman was wearing.
Something a lot of women worry about, including me, is going out for a run alone in the evenings, especially when it's so dark like this in the winter. At Girls on the Go, they started a women's-only running club for exactly this reason, to get some safety in numbers.
Had a couple of incidents like catcalling, some people almost like trying to chase you, trying to offer you a race. The second you touch your toes or you go into a squat. Whistles out of cars, horns being honked. Every single girl here will have some form of experience around sexual harassment.
The Angelini inquiry found there are still problems with how police deal with sexual crimes, including non-contact offences like harassment, with a quarter of forces not having basic policies in place.
We are told frequently by women and girls, and in this report, that they are likely to change their behaviour in order to feel safe. For too long, this has been seen as inevitable. It is not, and we agree that our focus must be on the relentless pursuit of perpetrators and in spotting patterns of offending.
Years on from Sarah Everard's death, for many women, the fear remains. And there may still be a long way to go before they can trust that anything has really changed. Katie Barnfield, Sky News, Merseyside.
Well, you heard in Katie's report there that the lead of the inquiry, Lady Eilish Angelini, well, my colleague Sarah Jayne sat down with her earlier and spoke to her about the report.
This all started with Sarah Everard, her rape and murder 4 years ago. 4 years on, what's changed?
There have been a number of initiatives which have arisen since then, which are positive and which I'm delighted have happened. But while the police and chief constables accepted the recommendations made in full, sadly they haven't been implemented. And so, although there may be changes taking place, they're not the changes which I recommended and which they accepted in the public fora, and therefore it's really important that they get on with it.
Violence against women and girls is endemic, and it has been, if we're honest, for as long as we can remember.
Yes.
And there's something about Sarah Everard's story that shook us as a society. You felt it, I felt it, everyone watching felt it, that was a watershed moment for women and girls, and them being better protected. I just want to understand how it feels to you that your recommendations from your first report have been implemented. Some of the recommendations today you have said aren't new. They've come from other reports into violence against women and girls.
Yes.
Yet they're not being seized upon still. How do you feel about that? Because I feel angry.
I'm incredulous because they're not complex, they're not difficult. And I think it's in everyone's interest, including the forces in question, because it's going to improve their performance. It's going to make sure that these crimes are being detected and indeed there's a greater impetus to make those who are more likely to commit these offences hesitate if they can see that action being taken. And I therefore hope that the publication of this report will stir them on further.
We did have a response from the government today to your report in the House of Commons, and Jess Phillips stood up and talked about a £13 million investment in the National Centre for Violence Against Women and Girls and Public Protection, because your report did find inconsistencies across England and Wales and how this was treated, how women were protected. But the government are yet to publish their strategy on violence against women and girls. You know, this was one of their manifesto pledges. We still haven't seen that strategy. How pressing is it that they get on with that and publish that? They say they don't want to do it until they can make it robust enough to fulfil that pledge of halving violence against women and girls. But how urgently do we need to see it and for it to be put into place?
Well, as soon as possible. And my own understanding was that it was going to be published very, very quickly. But that's not because I have information from the government. But I do hope that they do it. I certainly know that the Prime Minister, who was Director of Public Prosecutions at a time when I was the Lord Advocate or Attorney General of Scotland, similar to that, that he had a sincere interest in this area, and I very much hope that because of that experience, again, that he will ensure that the report is implemented so far as possible, and that their own report will add to the safety of women in public as well as men in public.
Your report talks about evidence and data as well, and so many of these inquiries and reports are based on evidence and data in order to inform meaningful recommendations. But you found that evidence and data for what you needed simply wasn't there. Basic questions didn't have answers. How many women are attacked or raped in public spaces? How much did that actually affect what was in your report?
Well, of course, it detracts from what's in the report if it's not clear what the volume is or what the occurrence rate is, and I think that's why there needs to be. It sounds very dull. There need to be statistics which can be used to help inform, again, intelligence as to where the areas are, where are things taking place, what particular areas are dangerous, and what is the extent of the problem as well.
Much of what is in your report isn't new to the women that will read it. It's their lived experience, it's their worst fears on paper. They're in black and white. What is it you want to say to those women? Because we've talked about the lack of action. We've never talked about this endemic of violence against women and girls more, but it's just not being backed up. What would your personal message be to them?
Don't be afraid to report. Assert your right to be heard and to stop these things happening, not just to you, but to the rest of the female community, the elderly community as well. By doing that, you're participating as a member of your community to try and reduce the danger that there is for yourself in the future, for your children in the future, and for those who you love and care for. It's not to put a pressure on people to do that. Many people just cannot bring themselves to report a sexual offence. But there is no blame, there is no shame to be attached to being the victim of a sexual offence. Most of us have had some incident happen in our lifetime, and they should feel that when they are reported, that they're treated with the greatest of respect and with an effective response from those who have that responsibility.
Well, I'm joined now by Mina Smallman. Her daughters Biba and Nicole were murdered back in 2020, and police officers then took pictures with their bodies and shared them with colleagues. Mina, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. The fact that violence against women and girls is underreported, not documented, not regarded as serious by the police, none of that is news to you, is it?
No, it isn't. And just to say, not all policemen and not all police forces are indifferent to this whole issue. The difficulty is implementing and monitoring that things are changing. I went into the Met a few weeks ago and discovered some glaring holes in vetting, in data collection, and some of that isn't the fault of the police. They're working with antiquated equipment, and they have to pay for the use of programmes, which is a nonsense. They have to pay for it out of the funding. Why isn't it just given to them so that they can do the job that they need to do?
So this is the programmes that they are using to recruit people, the vetting programmes?
To recruit, to gather data and information. The vetting is a whole nother, and the training system. There's no reporting system on individual police. So from training right the way through, every time they move a department, there is no record of any disciplinary failures or problems or quirks in their training. When they move from one department to another, it's like they start again. And this is ridiculous. I couldn't believe it.
Do you sense from the time that you've spent going in to talk and try to help these police forces get better, which many would say is incredibly admirable given what your daughters endured, that there is a willingness to change?
I believe there is a willingness to change. And interestingly, it's all the decent police that actually hold their head in shame for the ones that do these terrible things. It's not one apple, we know that now, we're clear about that. But more than anything, this cannot be solved by the police alone. We need a whole national approach to dealing with this issue. And it includes education, the health mental health, the police, every level of service that we can have needs to be involved in this. And also, as a society, we have to take accountability for the safety of our women and girls. I mean, stop giving information that people like Andrew Tate describing what masculinity is all about. Can we shut that noise off and give airtime to the good men who are more and have so much more to offer? But actually, I have a call for men. I know that you are good men out there, and it's time for you now to kind of stand up, a bit like it's time where we had celebrity women. We need celebrity men, and we need a national demonstration where men come out and say, we are standing to look and protect our women and girls, and you do not speak for us, and we are standing with you in solidarity. That's what we need. We need the good men to step up and say, we are here for you and we are going to look out for you.
I mean, it's a lovely idea. You know, I won't hold my breath to see if it'll happen, unfortunately. It seems that as a society, we frame what happens against women and girls as partly being their fault, doesn't it? You know, it's women who have to take the action to dress differently, to not go to particular areas, to take care of their own safety, rather than, at the heart of it, addressing the fact that it's male behaviour that needs to change.
Exactly, and the emphasis has always been on us to change our behaviour, and the way we look or the way we act is a reason why we end up being assaulted. Well, we know that's rubbish. Well, you know, I hear about men feeling as though they're being vilified and they're being bashed. Well, if you don't agree with it, you need to come out and speak about it. You need to actually be more proactive in support of women. Don't stand in the shadows. Don't sit in groups with men who are speaking in ways that are derogatory. And, you know, when I think of Cousin's name and Carrick's name, the rapist, can you imagine a decent man being called the rapist by his colleagues? He would be so upset. He would go to the superiors and say, you need to stop this. This is horrendous. So, you know, there is a kind of complicity that goes on. We need everybody at every level to address this issue. And so, you know, if you're with girls and you see guys putting drugs in drinks, you know, don't put a girl in a taxi that isn't a registered one. Make sure she gets home, because I can assure you, once this has happened to someone in your family, you never see it the same again. You start doing what I'm asking men to do now: stand up and make sure that you are on the right side of history and make the change happen. And I'm sick to death of reports and inquiries that happen. This report is vital. The evidence is there. I've been interviewed. Families who have gone through this horrific journey have been interviewed. But it can't do it on its own. We need a collective approach. And I'm very disappointed that the past government and this government, they've never invited me into Number 10. They've never asked me what I think of this report that's coming out. I've recently been asked, they're going to reference Bieber and Nicole in the paper. And I've said, and they've asked, you know, they don't want to distress me, and is that okay? I said, well, I can't okay something I've never seen sight of, so if you'd like to send me the frame of words, I shouldn't be an afterthought. I should be someone that they want to talk to give them insights into what I've discovered as I've been speaking to the various constabularies in the country, and what it feels like to be a mother who has been let down by the police force in a most horrific way. Thankfully, you know, Sarah Everard's, hopefully that is going to be the only one. And Susan, Sarah's mum, is the most amazing, beautiful human being. And I know, and every mother and father that has lost a child to femicide, we know exactly that story that she's talking about. It never goes away, and you never know when you're going to be triggered. And every time we hear of a woman or a girl who's been murdered at the hands of a man, we relive that nightmare. This is serious, and this is something that needs to change. And I'm sick of the talk, and I can tell you everyone else is too.
Indeed. Change would be lovely, wouldn't it? Mina Smallman, really good to talk to you today, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's just bring you a bit of breaking news, and this is following a road accident yesterday. The police in North Yorkshire have now named a young girl who died. This was a crash in Tadcaster, a two-vehicle crash that happened on Monday lunchtime. She has been named as 16-year-old Eleanor Haigh, known as Ellie, from Sherburn and Elmet, she was a sixth form student at Tadcaster Grammar School. She was a passenger in a school minibus that was in collision with a Hyundai at the junction with Rudgate on Toulston Lane yesterday lunchtime. The minibus was carrying lots of her school friends as well, 9 passengers who were between the ages of 16 to 18. And despite the efforts of the emergency services, Ellie died at the scene. There's another teenage girl with serious injuries. And the driver of the Hyundai, who's believed to be a 40-year-old woman from Leeds, has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving and causing serious injury by dangerous driving. Still to come on the UK Tonight. The Justice Secretary unveils a series of reforms to jury trials. We'll have the details. Also ahead, why MPs are launching an inquiry into the Crown Estate. And we'll look back on the life of England cricketer Robin Smith, who's died at the age of 62.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Jury trials in England and Wales for crimes that carry a likely sentence of less than 3 years are to be scrapped. It's part of the government's plans to reform the criminal justice system to tackle unprecedented delays in the court system. It comes as the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, faces renewed pressure over the mistaken release of more prisoners, with 2 at large. Sky's Dan Whitehead reports.
The long wait for justice is something Peter is all too familiar with. Sexually abused as a teenager, his attacker was sentenced 12 months ago. But that was more than 8 years after he first went to police.
I spoke to them, and then there was 8 years of delay and mistakes and things that went wrong, all through no fault of my own, all systems that didn't support each other. And it was terrible. I felt like 8 years of my life were almost put on hold. It's this constant state of turmoil and stress, and almost, it's like if anyone's experienced grief, it's grief you can't ever get closure for because it hasn't finished.
It's cases like this the government wants to see sped up. To do so, a package of reforms, including a major shift away from jury trials, to try and clear a backlog of nearly 80,000 cases.
We now face an emergency in the courts, and we must act. As Lord Chancellor, my responsibility is to ground reform in the rule of law and the right to a fair trial. We will ensure cases are dealt with at the right level, proportionate to their severity, and deliver the swifter justice victims deserve.
The proposals will see jury trials scrapped for defendants where a likely sentence would be under 3 years. The most serious indictable cases, including rape, murder and terrorism, will continue with juries. In so-called either-way cases, defendants will lose the right to choose to be tried by jury. Instead, judges and magistrates will make that decision. Courts will also have more sitting days, so they're open for longer, with a £550 million package to support victims. There'll be more powers too for magistrates' courts. The Crown Court here in Bristol, where the backlog is much worse, is around 500 metres over there. To tackle the problem, the Justice Secretary is going to give the magistrates down here the power to hand out even longer sentences, from the current 12 months to up to 2 years. But there are concerns and critics who feel reducing jury trials won't solve the problem.
There's no evidence that removing jury trials will actually reduce the backlog. There's plenty of evidence that improving efficiencies in the court system by investing in it properly and removing cases from the backlog that should not be there will reduce it. We'd rather see those steps taken first than making such a constitutional change.
Worries too that judges could face intimidation.
Judges would be susceptible to a certain degree of subliminal pressure from the areas in which they sit. They would be recognised, they would be known, they would be subject to potential abuse in a very divided society that we live in. And in fact, juries are not subject to that.
All these changes come as the Justice Secretary admits another 12 prisoners have been mistakenly released in the last 3 weeks. As court cases are sped up, that could shift pressure onto a prison system already at breaking point. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Bristol.
Still to come on the UK tonight, we'll have the latest from Tunbridge Wells, where thousands of residents are entering a 5th day without running water. MPs are to launch an inquiry into the Crown estate following questions over its lease to the former Prince Andrew. It's thought Andrew could be entitled to almost £500,000 in compensation for giving up the mansion in Windsor, although the Crown estate believes he will not receive a penny due to the state of the property. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock explains.
This is a really significant moment because for a long time questions have been raised about the transparency of the Crown estate. And I think the revelations about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's lease arrangements at Royal Lodge, that vast home he lives in on the Windsor estate, which is owned by the Crown estate, have prompted yet more questions. As part of their inquiries, MPs on the Public Accounts Committee, this powerful scrutinising committee, asked both the Crown estate and the Treasury to justify and explain his arrangements, given his change in circumstances after he had to step down from royal duties, after he lost his royal title, his royal style as well. And I think what's come out has prompted yet more questions. So what we do know, we've had the publication, the release of his lease arrangement. We do know that he has this very unusual peppercorn rent deal, but we found out more detail that he won't get compensation because although he would have been due nearly £500,000 worth of compensation for leaving the property before the end of the lease, it is in a dilapidated state. It needs maintenance, it needs repair, so he won't get any money at the end of it. We've also learnt the date which he has to leave the property by, which is basically 12 months away. It'll be in October next year. He's got a 12-month notice period. However, it's unlikely he'll stay there any further. But I think the fact that the committee has decided to investigate the whole of the Crown estate is a very interesting moment. For a long time, people have said, many have said that it's too complex, the arrangements are opaque. And I think this will change next year when they scrutinise the deals that members of the royal family get with their leases from properties on the royal estate, when they go through the Crown estate accounts with a fine-tooth comb. This powerful public spending watchdog will scrutinise this for the first time in many, many years.
Laura Bundock there. Now, 14,000 homes in Kent are without water for a fourth day after an issue at a treatment plant. South East Water's apologised to customers in Tunbridge Wells, with 3 bottled water stations open across the town until supplies return. Sky's Olivia Guthrie is there.
The Prime Minister has told Sky News tonight that he hopes South East Water are straining every sinew to restore water, adding that the government will hold water companies to better account. This is the 4th day that Tunbridge Wells has been without water. 14,000 homes are still affected and schools and businesses are still closed. It's being blamed on a water quality problem at the Pembury water treatment works nearby. South East Water have apologised and they're now offering free bottled water to residents. There are 3 of these water bottle stations here in Tunbridge Wells, and there have been cars queuing around the block all day with residents desperate for water. Now, staff here have been pretty cagey with me. They won't tell me how much water even they're giving to each person, but it would seem that they're giving about 12 2-litre bottles per household away, and one family of 4 told me that that's simply not enough for their needs, and another resident told me that they are now resorting to harvesting rainwater to make do. Well, locals are complaining that the deadline for when the supply of water is going to be coming back on keeps getting pushed back, and that the communication from South East Water has been poor. The local MP, Liberal Democrat Mike Martin, says it shows a total failure of leadership, and he's calling on the Chief Executive of South East Water to quit over this. Now, tonight, Sky News has been told by South East Water that they are currently very unlikely to be able to reintroduce supply to those customers that are still without water. So there are still 14,000 households that are without water tonight, with some very angry and frustrated residents just desperate to know when their water supply will be turned back on.
Olivia Guthrie there. Coming up on the UK Tonight, we'll look back on the life of England cricketer Robin Smith with his former teammate Alan Lamb. And how Erling Haaland became the fastest player in history to reach 100 Premier League goals tonight.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of ESL.
Welcome to the DHL Sports Hub on Sky News. Coming up, England named their team for the second Ashes test as Joe Root questions whether there's a need for a day-night match in the series. We'll tell you why boxing promoter Eddie Hearn has floated the idea that Anthony Joshua should perhaps retire after his next fight, despite plans for 2 more in 2026. But we start with Formula One and a 3-way world title fight, which will now come down to the final round of the season in Abu Dhabi on Sunday. Lando Norris remains in control at the top of the standings after a dramatic Qatar Grand Prix, but Max Verstappen has overtaken Oscar Piastri with his 5th win in 8 races, leaving him looming ominously over the British driver's shoulder. Verstappen's latest success came after every remaining driver except the McLarens and Esteban Ocon pitted for new tyres at a safety car on lap 7. While Norris and Piastri each questioned that, the team said they retained flexibility nobody else had due to the 25-lap limit Pirelli had set on their compounds. McLaren's strategy was ultimately wrong, as it left both drivers still having to come in twice. Verstappen only needed to stop once more and pulled clear of Piastri to take the checkered flag. Norris gained 2 more points with a final lap overtake on Kimi Antonelli to finish 4th, and that could yet prove to be crucial.
I didn't expect to win today, that's for sure. I think also looking at pure pace, we were not on the same level as McLaren, but we made the right call as most of the grid in boxing under the safety car, and that almost gives you a free pit stop, kind of. Yeah, that made the race for me. Of course, I knew after that pit stop it was going to be 2 long stints on the tyre in terms of tyre wear, but we managed that, I think, very well. And yeah, they didn't really, catch up too much. It was all under control, let's say like that. But yeah, for sure that call with the pit stop made me win the race today.
I was interested in the comment you made earlier in the week when you said you're only in this fight because of other people's failures. Do you think today was an example of that?
Another one, yeah.
I don't really know what to say. Obviously, we didn't get it right with the strategy. I think the pace was very strong. I feel like I didn't put a foot wrong. Just a shame to not walk away with a win.
Did you want to come in under the safety car? Were you asking to, or?
I mean, I left it in the team's hands to decide what the best strategy was. They've clearly got they have more information than I do, but yeah.
Are you worried at all that by trying to be fair to both of you, that the team is risking the Drivers' Championship for one or other of you?
I'm not sure today's decision was to do with that. I think we potentially just got it wrong, but I'll speak to the team.
Always a gamble. I feel like we're the ones who took the gamble in a way, but yeah, I mean, now it's the wrong decision. We shouldn't have done it. Oscar lost the win and I lost P2. So yeah, we didn't do a good job today, but we've done plenty of good jobs in other races, and we won the constructors 7 races ago, 6 races ago because of that. So no, not our finest day, but that's life.
It's very magnanimous of you, but do you worry at all that by the team trying to play fair, you're both at risk of losing the drivers now?
I know, everyone keeps thinking that. It's got nothing to do with that.
Well, if you could both come in, you would have double stacked, and you may have been compromised by that and kept out a bit.
Sure.
Maybe that's on the team's mind as well.
Yeah, but he didn't come in.
No, I know, I'm saying that maybe that's why they didn't. So going forward then, there's 12 points to Max. He is now the closest to you in this title race. What sort of hope have you got for Abu Dhabi, seeing the pace they managed to find today?
I think they were just as quick today as they were yesterday. It's just they did a better job as a team. They made the right call.
So here's how things look with 1 race to go. Norris leads by 12 points from Verstappen, whose momentum has taken him past Piastri 4 points further behind. That's a huge turnaround 3 months after the Dutchman had been 104 points off the pace. A podium finish in Abu Dhabi will make Norris champion regardless of his rivals' results. The DHL fastest lap is going down to the final day of the season too, after Piastri took it in Qatar. His time on lap 44 means he has 6 of them in 2025, the same as Norris. Piastri was also involved in the DHL fastest pit stop of 2.08 seconds, but Ferrari are already convincing winners of that award. They lead second place McLaren by 137 points there. And excitement at Verstappen, perhaps completing the biggest comeback in F1 history, might have fueled the vote in the Driver of the Day presented by Salesforce. He took that for the 3rd race in succession, just edging out Carlos Sainz. So yet another boost for Verstappen, who had looked down and out after 8 races without victory over the summer, but a big response required from McLaren. Their team principal, Andrea Stella, admits they got it wrong.
It was a decision not to pit, and in fairness, we didn't expect everyone else to pit. Obviously, when everyone else behind you pits, then it makes it pitting like definitely the right thing to do. Obviously, when you are the lead car, you don't know exactly what the others are going to do. There could have been a loss for Lando in pitting in case we were pitting both cars with the double stack. The main reason was related to not expecting everyone else to pit. So it was a decision, but as a matter of fact, it wasn't the correct decision.
A familiar face at the track in Qatar was Adrian Newey, who was seen at a race weekend for the first time since he joined Aston Martin from Red Bull last year. He'll take on the role of team principal in the early part of 2026 as Andy Cowell focuses on other areas of the business, but maintains that won't stop him from being heavily involved in the design and development of their new car.
With the challenge of the 26 PU, then Andy's skill set in terms of helping the three-way relationship between Honda, Aramco and ourselves is absolutely his skill set. So he very magnanimously volunteered to be heavily involved in that through the first part of 26. That left a kind of, okay, well, who's going to be TP? And since I'm going to be doing all the early races anyway, it doesn't actually particularly change my workload.
On to cricket, and England have made a big call ahead of the second Ashes test in Brisbane by selecting spin bowler Will Jacks as the injured Mark Wood's replacement. The tourists go into the match trailing 1-0 following last month's 8-wicket defeat inside 2 days, and for Jacks it'll be his first test in 3 years after he was picked ahead of Shahid Bashir. The meeting at the Gabba is a day-night fixture, and while Joe Root's unsure there's any need for that, he says England must be prepared nonetheless.
It does add to things. It's obviously very successful and very popular here, and obviously Australia have got a very good record here as well. So you can see why we're playing one of those games, and ultimately, but it's 2 years out that it's going to be there. So like it's part and parcel of making sure you're ready for it. A series like this, does it need it? I don't think so, but it doesn't mean that it's should be.
Now, how's this for a vote of confidence? Boxing promoter Eddie Hearn says he and Anthony Joshua should retire if his fighter can't beat Jake Paul later this month. The former world heavyweight champion takes on the YouTuber in Miami on December the 19th, and Hearn's expecting a quick finish.
I really believe this is going to be a straightforward obliteration. I mean, that's what I believe. And with Anthony, he's training like he's challenging for the world title. He's training like he's fighting a top 5 heavyweight in the world, which, of course, Jake Paul is not. If you want to fight Anthony Joshua, if you've got this grand delusion that you are this guy that can beat this former 2-time world heavyweight champion and Olympic gold medalist, and he's, as Jake Paul said, he's chin's gone, he's a stiff fighter with bad movement, then we have a real fight. And fair play to Jake Paul, he's signed up for a real fight. But very quickly, he is going to think to himself, what on earth have I done here? So credit to you, respect to you, but understand one thing, you will find out very quickly what this game is all about, and it will not be pleasant for you. I get stopped in the street, people saying to me, is there a script? I'm like, yeah, there is a script. It's we go out and knock this guy clean out for boxing, and then we move on for a massive 2026. That's the only script from our side. If I'm wrong, I think my time's up. Not just AJ and me retire. I think we should all retire. I think boxing should end if this goes wrong, So AJ, the weight of boxing is on your shoulders, my man.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of VSL.